Okay. So once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. For today's webinar, we will be integrating FileCloud with antivirus applications as an added security when you upload files into your FileCloud server. So in today's webinar, we will be covering your options on what antivirus to integrate with your FileCloud system. How do we enable antivirus integration in FileCloud, and what you need to know about antivirus integration with your FileCloud system. So FileCloud can be integrated with a variety of available antivirus solutions in the market, or that's available in the market. So below are some of your options. So first is you can integrate with ClamAV, which is an open source antivirus software that is included with FileCloud. So that's a basic integration that you can apply. However, if you do happen to have an already existing antivirus solution, you may have the option to use ICAP to integrate with FileCloud. So now, assuming that you have already you already have your own antivirus solution installed, how do we enable antivirus integration with FileCloud? So the FileCloud, the integration configuration can be found within the admin portal. So that would be admin portal, or you log into the FileCloud admin portal, go to settings, go to third-party integrations, and you will see an antivirus tab where you can integrate, or you have the option to integrate either ClamAV or use ICAP. So these are just the basic configurations that you can see. You do have an option to select what type of antivirus you would want to integrate. You do have a tab for the ClamAV integration or the configuration, and another tab for the ICAP AV configurations. Now let's do a demo here. What I'm going to show in this demo is how we would install ClamAV on one of your servers. So you have the option to install ClamAV on the same server as your FileCloud server, or you could have it on a separate server. So let's go ahead. First thing is you will need to download the latest version of ClamAV. On my end, I do have ClamAV already downloaded, or the executable file for ClamAV. And you will also need to download FileCloud's Service Manager. So these are the two items that you will need to download. This is also, or the instructions for installing ClamAV is also available in our support documentations, which we will be including in an email that we'll be sending later on. First thing is basically you just need to run ClamAV on your host server. So in my case, I'm just installing this on the same server as my FileCloud server as well. So that indicates that I do have ClamAV already installed. Next thing that I will need to do here is I need to unzip the Service Manager that I've downloaded. And if you're installing ClamAV on the same server as FileCloud server, we just need to copy the extracted file over into the XAMPP folder. This is where your FileCloud installation will be, or is located. And I've copied the file over there. Now we need to install ClamAV, or we need to install the ClamAV service using the Service Manager. So first things first is I would want to open Command Prompt and run Command Prompt as an admin and navigate to this directory right here. Like so. And I would need to run a command to install the FileCloud or the ClamAV service. And this command will also be available in is also available in the support documentations. Okay, let me check. Should have this. Okay, so this will appear. This is a service installer, and it would prompt you to locate the location of the ClamAV executable file. By default, from the installation earlier, it was in the local C drive under Program Files and under the ClamAV directory. So I would select that one and just go ahead and click on install. I will leave the service name as ClamD and would click on install service. And it should be a quick one. It would give you a successful prompt that the service has been installed. The next thing that we would need to do here is we'll need to go into the ClamAV directory. I'll put this one aside. And under the config examples directory, you will need to copy these two files up one level. So basically, you just need to go back into the main ClamAV directory and paste the two files and rename the two files to remove the sample extensions. Just like so. Change it. Next is we may need to modify the two files so you can open it up using Notepad++. I would want to try and open. You will need to run Notepad++ as an administrator. I just do it. I just use Notepad++, but you could use a different editing or a text editor as well for your preference. So I would need to open the directory here. And clam config. Also be doing the same for the other config file. From the clam config, you will need to comment out the example section. So this line right here. And you will need to look for a line in the config that would say TCP ADDR. So basically, this is the IP address of your FileCloud server. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to leave this to the loopback address. And before I do that, I go ahead and save the file and go into the fresh ClamAV. I would do the same there by commenting out the example line, and there's no other configuration that needs to be changed. That should have already been saved. Next thing is we will need to update the ClamAV database, and we will have to do that using the command prompt. So going back to the command prompt that I have opened earlier, I just need to navigate back into the ClamAV directory. And we're in the ClamAV directory. I just need to run the freshclam.executable file. Usually it takes about a minute to complete the entire update. Just make sure that the server that you do have the ClamAV hosted on has internet access, because it may need to download the database for the antivirus. Once this one is done, we just need to make sure that we start the service. And also one thing to make sure is that we're going to run netstat later on, just to check if the service is running and if it's listening to the correct port. Okay, this one's already done. Next thing that we need to do, we just need to open up services and make sure that we do have ClamAD, or it's actually called ClamD because that's the name of the service from earlier. And we just need to start the service. Service is started. Next thing is just basically run a netstat command just to check if we do have ClamAD actually listening to the port. So this is basically this is the port for ClamAD. And to double check, I always want to go into Task Manager and go to Details, look for ClamAD, and check on the process ID just to compare. So, and it has the same process ID as what we have in here. So now the service is started. We do have ClamAV already installed. The next thing that we will need to do here is go into the FileCloud server or log into the admin portal. Once logged into the admin portal, I just need to log in here with one of my admin accounts. And from the slides from earlier, go into settings, third-party integrations, antivirus, and I have here selected ClamAV. I just need to enter the host for ClamAV. So remember, ClamAV, I've hosted this on the same server as the FileCloud server. So I'm just going to use the loopback address because they're on the same server. And the ClamAV port would be here. I will leave the file size and the stream chunk size by default for now, and click on ClamAV test. So you should get a message that would say something like verify or connection has been verified successfully. You go ahead and click OK. And that should have let you know that your ClamAV is running and your integration with FileCloud and your ClamAV antivirus is already working. You also have an option, by the way, to go into the ICAP configuration. I do have another instance here that I do have ICAP config, or I just want to show you a quick look at the configuration if you are using ICAP instead of ClamAV. Let me just log into this instance. Okay, from this instance, go to third-party integrations, antivirus. If I go into ICAP AV, you can see here that I do have some configuration. So the local server, we can keep it as it is. By default, it's we can leave it as all zeros, but we do have the ICAP remote server. So if you do have ICAP installed, or if you do have your antivirus that supports ICAP installed on a different remote server, you can put in the IP address here, and you also have the port, and then the service name for your ICAP antivirus would be here. So those are the key configurations that you have. And if it's also communicating using SSL, you may need to enable this button. And the same thing, you can run the ICAP test just like this one, and it should tell you that the ICAP AV has been verified successfully. So that will be it. And let me go back to the previous server, and I will log in as a regular user. Now, at this point, we will test how the FileCloud server will be able to capture suspected files. Let me just log in. Okay, so we're in. I'm just going to go into my files here. I've got a folder called AV tests. Also, I do have some sample files on my system that I'm just going to disable my local antivirus really quick, just so we can successfully upload the files. So I do have some sample files here. These are the ones that I've downloaded. These are standard ransomware test files that we have. So I'm trying out a text file here that I'm going to upload in the system. What you will notice here that it would say that it was successful, but you may notice that it's not showing up in the actual interface as it was uploaded. I'm also going to try a different file. This one's a zip file. It'll also say that it was uploaded, but it's not showing up in the system. And the third one would also be another zip file that would show us this. From the toast notification, you will see in the dropdown that the upload had actually failed. All three files that I've uploaded in the system failed, and these are suspected. These are ransomware test files, that standard ones. From the admin portal, you can see in the audit logs that we do get those actions, and we do get notification or an alert, and that the uploading of the files was not successful. So basically, this is how you would see your antivirus running on your FileCloud system. Now, go ahead. What do you need to know about your FileCloud antivirus? So a couple of things that you just need to take note. Your FileCloud antivirus integration should work with both Linux and Windows system. What I'm showing you a demo right now is just on my Windows because I don't have access to my Linux or system right now. The antivirus scanning, if you noticed earlier, will apply only to uploaded files. So the files needs to be uploaded in the FileCloud system for the antivirus to trigger. And the virus scanning is scheduled to run as soon as the file is uploaded successfully. So say, for example, the demo that I showed you was just a quick one because the files are actually pretty small or fairly small. But if the files are bigger, FileCloud will wait for the upload to complete before it kicks in with the virus scanning. Also, the virus is managed from the FileCloud server, if you noticed earlier from the configuration. And you do have an option to host your antivirus on the same server as your FileCloud system, or it could be on a remote server as well. And lastly, when do you use ICAP from AV or from ClamAV is that if you just want to use the built-in antivirus that comes with FileCloud, you could go ahead and use ClamAV. Otherwise, if you don't want to use ClamAV and you do have an already existing antivirus solution on your network, you could use ICAP integration as an option for you. And so far, that sums up my demo, my webinar for FileCloud or antivirus integration with FileCloud. Do you have, anybody has any questions for today? Also, I will be asking our team to be sending out a link to our support documentations on how you could configure your ClamAV or your ICAP antivirus integration with FileCloud. It's already there in our system, but it's a good thing if we could also send it out through a follow-up email. Okay, it looks like we don't have any more questions. We look forward to everyone joining on our next webinar, and I would like to bid everybody a good day ahead. Oh, give me a moment. I think we did have some questions. So I have a question here. Would both antivirus work on both platforms? Yes. You should be able to, as long as the antivirus supports both Windows, and I know ClamAV works on both Windows and Linux. If you are using a non-ClamAV antivirus, as long as it supports both Linux and Windows, the integration will also work. And also our support documentation includes how you could install or set up your antivirus integration on Linux as well. So. And it looks like we don't have any more questions. Everyone should be all set. Okay, well, I would like to thank everyone for joining. However, we do have, I would like to let you know that we do have some pages that are very useful in our FileCloud website. You can go into getfilecloud.com, FileCloud/tutorial videos. We've also published some new videos as well for tutorials. You could also email support@codelathe.com for any support needs, or you could just visit our support documentations at getfilecloud.com/support docs. And I look forward to everyone joining on our next webinar. Thank you.